Hello friends, in this session, we are going to see about intuition and trust. In the previous sessions, we investigated the relationship between the body, desire, emotions, and psychological happiness. We discovered that the body has genuine needs, and when those needs are satisfied, they naturally bring pleasure and well-being. As our inquiry deepened, we made another important discovery. When the mind remembers past pleasurable and happy experiences, it begins to think about them and crave experiencing them again. Gradually, desire is born. Through our investigation, we discovered that desire arises from three closely connected processes: memories of past pleasurable and happy experiences, thoughts that repeatedly recall and imagine those experiences, craving to experience them again. We also observed that desire influences many of our emotions. When desire is blocked, anger, fear, and frustration often arise. When desire is fulfilled, attachment, anxiety, and the fear of loss often follow. As we continued our inquiry, we found that desire also influences our psychological happiness. It shapes the way we relate to life, people, and our daily work. Much of our suffering begins when reality does not match what we desire. This leads us to another important observation. If thoughts keep returning to past pleasures, imagine future pleasures, and keep craving their repetition, they seem to move us away from happiness rather than toward it. Please don't accept this as a conclusion. Observe it in your own life. When the mind repeatedly thinks about what it once enjoyed or what it hopes to enjoy in the future, does it become more peaceful? Or does it become restless, dissatisfied, and anxious? If this is true, then another important question naturally arises. If thoughts driven by memory and desire often move us away from happiness, then what should guide our life instead? Let us investigate. Can we live without desire? In our previous investigation, we observed that desire often arises from memories of past pleasurable experiences, thoughts that repeatedly return to those experiences, and craving to experience them again. We also observed that this process often moves us away from happiness rather than towards it. This naturally raises another question. If desire creates so much suffering, can we simply stop desiring? Then what else should be used for living? Let us investigate. What is intuition? In our previous inquiry, we discovered that desire often moves us away from happiness. It begins when the mind remembers past pleasurable and happy experiences, thinks about them repeatedly, and gradually develops a craving to experience them again. As a result, the mind is constantly occupied with the past or the future. It remembers what it once enjoyed, imagines what it hopes to enjoy again, and seeks happiness somewhere other than the present moment. This naturally raises an important question. If desire is not the right guide for living, then what should guide our life? We still have to make decisions. We still have to respond to people, face uncertainty, choose our work, and deal with the countless situations that life presents each day. If we are not to be driven by desire, then how should we respond? Perhaps this is where intuition begins. Please do not think of intuition as something mysterious, supernatural, or a matter of blind belief. Let us approach it with the same spirit of inquiry that we have used throughout this journey. Have you ever experienced a moment when the appropriate response became clear without endless thinking? Not because you were chasing pleasure or trying to avoid discomfort, but because there was a quiet clarity about what needed to be done. Could this be what we call intuition? Perhaps intuition is a quiet understanding that appears when the mind is no longer dominated by desire and fear. When the mind is not busy remembering past pleasures, craving future happiness, or trying to control life, it naturally becomes attentive to the present. In that attentiveness, there is often a clarity that does not arise from struggle or endless analysis. It simply sees the situation as it is and responds accordingly. This may also lead us to reconsider something even more fundamental. Throughout our inquiry, we have been asking a simple question. Does this move me toward happiness or away from happiness? We discovered that excessive thinking often moves us away from happiness. We also discovered that craving and constant seeking often move us away from happiness. If this is true, then perhaps we have been looking in the wrong direction all along. Perhaps intelligence does not spend its energy chasing happiness. Perhaps intelligence first understands what creates unnecessary unhappiness and quietly stops feeding it. When desire no longer dominates the mind, when excessive thinking begins to settle, and when craving loses its hold, something interesting may happen. Happiness no longer needs to be pursued. It begins to appear naturally, just as peace naturally appears when noise comes to an end. If this understanding is correct, then intuition is not another technique for becoming happy. It is the natural expression of intelligence when the mind is no longer pulled by desire or burdened by unnecessary thinking. It does not promise future happiness. It simply helps us respond intelligently to this moment. Please do not accept this as a conclusion. Observe it in your own life. The next time you face a decision, notice what is guiding you. Is it desire? Is it fear? Or is there a quiet clarity that asks for nothing, seeks nothing, and simply knows the appropriate response? Perhaps that is where our inquiry into intuition truly begins. Why don't we trust intuition? If intuition is available to all of us, then another important question naturally arises. Why do we so often ignore it? Why do we continue to depend on desire, fear, and endless thinking, even after discovering that they frequently move us away from happiness? Perhaps it is because the mind longs for certainty. It wants to know that everything will work out exactly as planned before it is willing to take a step. It wants guarantees about the future. Yet, throughout our inquiry, we have repeatedly seen that life is constantly changing. People change, circumstances change, our health changes, and even our own thoughts and emotions change. If life itself is uncertain, is it possible to ever find complete certainty? Fear makes this even more difficult. We fear making the wrong decision. We fear criticism, failure, rejection, and disappointment. We fear choosing a path that others may not understand. Very often, our intuition quietly points in one direction, while fear pushes us in another. Instead of listening to our own understanding, we seek the safety of certainty, even when that certainty does not really exist. Our conditioning also influences us. From childhood, we are taught what success should look like, how we should live, what career we should choose, and what kind of life is considered respectable. Sometimes these expectations become so deeply rooted that we no longer pause to ask whether they actually move us towards happiness. We simply follow them because they are familiar. This leaves us with an important question. If we cannot find complete certainty in life, and if fear and conditioning often prevent us from following our own understanding, then what is missing? Perhaps the answer is not more thinking. Perhaps it is not more planning. Perhaps it is not another promise of certainty. Perhaps what is missing is trust. Not blind belief, not blind optimism, but a willingness to live without demanding complete certainty. A willingness to let intelligence respond to life as it unfolds instead of insisting that life unfold according to our desires. But can life really be trusted? Can we trust life? In the previous section, we saw that fear often prevents us from following our intuition. Much of that fear comes from our desire for certainty. We want to know what will happen tomorrow before we are willing to act today. But if life itself is constantly changing, can such certainty ever be found? This brings us to another important question. If life cannot be fully controlled, can it be trusted? Please do not answer immediately. Let us investigate through direct observation. Consider your own body. Did you create your heartbeat? Do you consciously digest your food after every meal? Do you tell your lungs to breathe while you are asleep? When your body is injured, do you consciously direct every cell to heal the wound? Every night, while you are asleep, your body repairs itself, restores its energy, and prepares itself for another day. Much of what keeps us alive happens without our conscious effort. Life has already been working intelligently through us since the day we were born. It gave us a body capable of growing, healing, adapting, and responding. Even now, countless processes are unfolding within us without our control. If life is already carrying out so much with such intelligence, could it be that it deserves more trust than we usually give it? Trust does not mean becoming passive or refusing to think. It does not mean believing that everything will always happen the way we want. Trust is something much simpler. It is the willingness to stop demanding complete certainty before living. It is the willingness to respond intelligently to each moment while accepting that life will continue to change. Perhaps this is another insight that intelligence reveals. Happiness may not come from trying to control life. It may come from understanding life, respecting its nature, and allowing it to unfold while responding to it with awareness. To trust life is not to surrender our intelligence. It is to trust that intelligence itself is enough. We do what can be done in the present, but we do not insist that the future obey our desires. We allow life to reveal the next moment, and we allow our response to arise from understanding rather than from fear. Please do not accept this as a conclusion. Observe your own life. Have there been moments when your greatest growth came not because everything went according to your plans, but because life unfolded differently? Could it be that life has been teaching and shaping you all along? When our responses are guided by desire, we often create additional suffering through fear, resistance, disappointment, and endless thinking. But when our responses arise from intuition, we stop adding unnecessary psychological suffering to what life has already presented. Perhaps this is the real significance of trusting life. Trusting life does not guarantee happiness. It helps us stay away from unnecessary unhappiness. As unnecessary unhappiness begins to reduce, something interesting happens. We no longer have to chase happiness. Happiness has the opportunity to arise naturally. Perhaps this is why intelligence does not spend its energy searching for happiness. Intelligence understands life, trusts life, and responds to each moment with clarity. In doing so, it gradually removes many of the causes of suffering that we ourselves create. Throughout our inquiry, we have discovered that desire often makes us repeat the past. It remembers past pleasures, seeks to recreate them, and wants life to unfold according to familiar patterns. In many ways, desire keeps us living from memory rather than from direct observation. But intuition seems to function differently. Intuition does not ask, "How can I repeat yesterday's happiness?" Nor does it ask, "How can I control tomorrow?" It responds to the reality of the present moment. Since every moment in life is new, every response arising from intuition is also fresh. Perhaps this is the beginning of creativity. Most of us think of creativity as painting, music, writing, or inventing something new. But could creativity be much deeper than that? Could creativity be the ability to respond intelligently to each new moment instead of mechanically repeating old habits, old fears, and old desires? When desire guides our actions, we often repeat the same patterns because we are seeking the same pleasures or trying to avoid the same fears. But when intuition guides our actions, our response is no longer borrowed from the past. It arises naturally from understanding what the present moment requires. Perhaps this is what it means to live creatively. A creative life is not necessarily a life filled with artistic talent. It is a life in which every response is fresh because it comes from awareness, intelligence, intuition, and trust rather than from conditioning and desire. If this is true, then another important question naturally arises. Can such a creative way of living lead us to a deeper and more lasting joy? Let us investigate that in our next session. Thank you.